Which three recruits will UConn land for 2025? You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, I just want to take a quick moment to ask for a small favor. If you're enjoying the content here, please take a second to subscribe to the show. Follow the audio versions wherever you guys listen to podcasts. It really helps the show grow. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the support. It means the world to me. And it keeps us growing. So also, every follow, subscription on YouTube, audio download of the podcast helps create more revenue for UConn NAL. You may ask, how? Locked On UConn is giving a 10% donation to Bleeding Blue for Good. So by supporting Locked On UConn, you are directly affecting the UConn athletic program. Thanks so much for being a part of this community. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, to receive 20% off your order. Okay. I tweeted this out over the weekend that we were, let's get the actual tweet. Let me see. To sift through a lot of NFL garbage to get through it. But essentially, in a nutshell, that I got a source who's very tied into the recruiting world in terms of reporting on where people are going, finding out, having text messages with players to kind of get their true and honest feelings about where they're going. And I will tell you that same source, not even the source that I have that is really connected to the Indiana program, who you will hear about talking about Braylon Mullins, is that UConn is in great shape for Braylon Mullins, that they are also in the top 4 with Acaden Lewis. That was retweeted by Joe Tipton when Acaden put that out. So I can't seem to find my tweet. This just tells me, yes, Braylon Mullins is going to come down to UConn versus Indiana. Kentucky is out, according to my sources. The wild card, IU, will pay almost anything to keep in the state of Indiana. However, I will also talk about another dark horse that makes a ton of sense. And when you guys hear this, you're going to go, oh, yeah, that does make a lot of sense. So UConn is not a lock to get Braylon Mullins, but apparently they're in good position. Kentucky landed Jasper Johnson. That made the domino fall where Mullins looked at this like Kentucky was number 1. They took Jasper Johnson. Indiana was 2. UConn was 3. But the reason a source who reached out to me that UConn is in a great position with Mullins is that Mullins' camp doesn't see Kentucky as an option anymore. Kansas is dedicating their time on other recruits like Eric Reeby, who UConn also loves, but KU seems to be in the driver's seat there. I don't have any other intel on that. KU still perceived the leader for Reeby. I checked in, and this is where it gets interesting. I checked in with my guy who's plugged into the Indiana basketball world, and he believes it's between IU and UConn, pretty much from what I remember. But I mean, Mike Woodson or Dan Hurley? But when I spoke to him this morning, he added another wrinkle to this ever-developing story. Braylon's dad is a big fan of Michigan's Dusty May. If you don't know who Dusty May is, he's a Terre Haute, Indiana native. He's a Final Four coach with Florida Atlantic University. Now gets to take over a Michigan program in the Big Ten with great resources, and is an Indiana alum who worked under former Hoosiers coach Mike Davis. So my source believes May could land Mullins as a sort of pseudo Indiana, because let's face it, if it's UConn versus Indiana for a recruit, UConn is winning that every single time. Mike Woodson versus Danny Hurley is not even close to a fair fight. But Dusty May definitely has some legs. That makes too much sense for a kid like Braylon, who recently visited, and there's too many connections for it not to be a major threat to UConn, getting the now 5-star Braylon Mullins, coveted by so many at 6'5", 180 pounds. And again, from what I've heard, Braylon is an absolute dog. He is a beast and just the type of kid that Hurley loves and covets. And for those that are saying, "Oh, but Mark, he just visited Carolina last weekend. He's got Indiana on the 21st, Tennessee on October 18th, and he's still going to Kentucky on the 25th." You'd be 100% correct. Those are all true. Unless we hear otherwise that he's canceling some of these, he's still going to take all of the visits. That's what everyone does. Who wouldn't want to get courted? It's part of the game now. You get your name out there. There's also another reason I'll get to in a second, but Braylon is a rising star. He's not the number one recruit in the country, but he's in the top 25 now. And it's good business to network and to meet all the coaches, get a feel for it. Could you see yourself going here? Could you not? Tell all your friends about it, post on Instagram, whatever it is. Because if it doesn't work out where you commit, let's say he does go with the dark horse and Dusty May, and he loved UConn. Well, then he can transfer to UConn next year. That's the nature of this, guys. So I'm putting this at UConn 1A, Indiana 1B. The one wild card with Indiana is that they have unlimited pockets and they're willing to pay probably over $1 million for Braylon. Don't think UConn thinks he's worth that much, so that could be the pseudo factor. And also, when it comes to UConn, if NIL is your top priority, you kind of tell on yourself and they move on. And I put Michigan as a 2. With Kentucky out of the picture for Braylon, we'll see how it plays out. So because again, he's still visiting. He just visited Carolina, great school. Hubert's been to a Final Four, lost the national championship game to Kansas. Tennessee, they just turned Dalton Connect into a first round pick. So look, there's more factors than all of this, but we'll talk about all the dominoes of all of this and why Kentucky has moved on this recruit and then to another UConn is very high on coming up after this. Like you're having kind of a so-so day and you have too much to do on your list and don't have enough energy, get through it with 5-Hour Energy. We have you covered. It's the go-to for a quick energy boost that helps you stay focused and alert no matter what life throws your way. With 0 sugar and only 4 calories, it's the perfect pick-me-up to keep you in the zone. Plus, has a variety of flavors like tropical burst, grape, watermelon. You can find the right one to fuel your day. Take a 5-Hour Energy shot, and in just minutes, you'll feel the benefits of an increased energy, focus that lasts for hours without the crash. Head over to 5hourenergy.com and use the code LOCKEDONCFG to get 20% off your first order. That's code LOCKEDONCFG at checkout to enjoy your 5-Hour Energy at a discounted rate. Stay energized, stay focused, and get things done with 5-Hour Energy. Okay, you're back on Locked On UConn. So we talked about the saga with Braylon Mullins, enter a dark horse with Dusty May in Michigan. Indiana still may get him. That's the thing, guys. I mean, he's an Indiana kid. They've been targeting him for a very long time. This is how this works. They, they have deep-seated relationships within the Indiana program, Braylon and his dad. It's every kid's dream to play for IU when they're a kid. Is it the same as you get older? I don't know. I think everybody grew up in Indiana thinking they're going to go play for Notre Dame football, and that doesn't always happen. So could this be a situation where he is ripe for the picking? I think so. So right now, Kentucky is going hard because they realize that Braylon is pretty much out of the picture. He's still going to come and visit, and they're going to give him the whole spiel. But in his heart of hearts, Kentucky is out, according to sources. All of this is subject to change. I will say this 1,000 times because I don't want to hear people say, if this all turns around and he commits to Kentucky, like, see, you told us Kentucky was out. Yeah, as of today, as of September 16th, Kentucky's not in the mix. But after the visit, maybe they roll out the red carpet, show him the check they're going to give him for NIL, and he decides they're back in the mix. So with Kentucky out of the mix as of September 16th, they are going hard after Acaden Lewis, who obviously UConn covets as well. They visited him after the White House trip. So that's an important one for them. So right now, we're really looking at Mullins, maybe Malik, and maybe Niko Bundalo. Because from everything that I've heard, Nico was enamored with UConn. His dad loved it. And who doesn't want one of the dads of the team to have a ponytail? I mean, come on. That's our guy right there. And according to the source in the high school recruiting ranks, he feels that UConn is definitely still in there with Acaden and Reby, although maybe not the leaders in the clubhouse. But the UConn staff is also very high and still very high on New Jersey native Darius Adams. He's ranked number 4 shooting guard in the class of 2025 by 24/7 Sports. His unofficial visit was late June, but he'll be back on campus officially October 4th. Don't know if this is confirmed, but it was reported that Kamani made a visit to Darius while when it was all post White House recruiting stuff happened, while with Dan and the boys visiting Acaden Lewis and Eric Reby. So what does all this mean, right? How do we decipher this? UConn is going to land 2 or 3 of these recruits, guaranteed. The names that are hot right now are Malik Thomas, Braylon Mullins, Niko Bundalo, Darius Adams, and Eric Reby. So teams pivot all the time. You have a few kids you love, and you see where all the dominoes drop. With Braylon being more of an option, Kentucky is pouncing on Acaden Lewis, trying to lure him to Lexington. From the same source, Niko Bundalo, again, loved UConn, and we're in a good spot there. Driver's seat may be too strong, but because of that, maybe that's why it's perceived that Eric Reby is leaning Kansas or even Creighton. All of these kids have parents, handlers, and people that are looking out for their best interests. But if you had 5 schools telling you that you're the man, come play for us, it's going to be tough. It's got to be a tough decision. And right here is exactly where I think Dan Hurley comes in and blows these guys out of the water. I have zero doubt Dan is respectful to these kids and that he recognizes their talent, but he's 100% not doing the normal coach speak. He is, it's been reported. All you have to do is listen to my interview with Tashid Carr on Ahmad Noel's recruitment. In his recollection, they talked hoops. They connected on where they grew up, about how basketball was life. He didn't say to Tashid, your kid's the best. He's going to start. We think we can get us a title, because Dan doesn't know. And he also doesn't know he also knows exactly what it takes to win a championship. So those are the conversations, not if your kid comes, we think he can put us over the top. He's saying, what can your kid come to my school to contribute? Tell us about Ahmad. What are his habits? Like all of this stuff. And Tashid was enamored with that. He knew that Dan was going to coach his kid hard, that he was the real, like he was a real guy. He wasn't just a coach coming in and saying, hey, we're going to do this, this, and this, and then 2 years later, I'm out of here. Dan turned down the Lakers. He's not going anywhere. And for all those, he could be in the NBA in a couple of years with the Knicks and stuff like that. Go watch that interview with Graham Bensinger. I think things change, but he's had that realization that his superpower as a coach is getting these kids to play his style of play and essentially giving them what he called Hell Week, like for Navy SEALs, that their practices are so stringent and so difficult that game time is that easy. And we've heard this stuff before, but it bars repeating because this is part of the pitch. If you want to come here, it's not going to be easy. This isn't, sunshines and rainbows. This is tough. I know Dan thinks there's tremendous upside if he, with Ahmad, if he plays, to go back to Ahmad Noel, if he plays and he wants that. And, what probably sealed the deal was that he's going to be coach hard, right? That's not going to be nothing's going to be handed to any of these kids. So I think that also is at the heart of his recruitment pitch, is that, do you want this? Do you truly want to be here? All the other stuff can be handled. NIL, where you're going to stay, we'll take care of XYZ, whatever's possible now. I couldn't even tell you all the ins and outs because I don't even want to get involved in that. I just know what they pay people sometimes. Sometimes I hear it. My mind is blown, and that's that. So that's not Dan's deal. He wants to know if you want to be at UConn. So right now, we're in that phase. Which of these kids wants to come play for a 2-time back-to-back national champion, or who wants to go play for Mark Pope or Mike Woodson or Dusty May or the ever-revolving door at Kansas as far as the players with Bill Self. All fine coaches. Bill Self's a Hall of Famer in their own right. I think Dusty May is elite. I think Mike Woodson should probably stay in the pros. Mark Pope, I think he's going to be good. But Hurley is the best in the game right now. So we will get 2 of the 3 of Malik Thomas, Braylon Mullins, Eric Reeby, Nico, Bundalo, or Bundaloo. Don't know. I've heard it both ways. Darius Adams, Acaden Lewis. We're in the mix with all of them because, as Dan said earlier in the year, a lot more access to recruits now that we went back to back. Figuring out which are the right recruits to pull is the challenge. So I believe we're leading with, from what I've heard, Braylon, tentatively, Nico, Darius. Although with Darius, and I will say this because Sam Lance brought this up when he was on the show, it's been real quiet with him. Like, there hasn't been a lot of chatter, but he's coming on the 4th, and they're really high on him. New Jersey kid, connecting dots. Kamani relationship. A lot of times, when Kamani has the main relationship, they come. That's just my, that's just fact. And Acaden Lewis. I think those are the 4 that we're leading in. But a toss-up on Malik Thomas and Eric Reeby. Remember, this is going to sound corny, but because it's a Nike ad now, but winning isn't for everyone. Only one team can be the victor on Monday night after the Final Four. So watching Dan's interview with Graham Bensinger over again, he showed some insight into practice. He brought in all the new guys and said, for all of you who have not won a single game for UConn and have not contributed one thing for UConn yet, why are you not running everywhere? Remember that video? Andre ran everywhere. My guy at exit 68, Dan Meehan. I have that shirt. Andre ran everywhere. He wants these guys to be obsessed with ball. And that's how he's going to respect you as a player and as a person. Not just the coaches, the kids too. So we'll see who will that be. I'll give you my predictions coming up after this. You've heard us talk all about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3 free week trial at NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to walk around. You can walk around and watch the games too. Every regular season Sunday afternoon at a marquee game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. I have it. I love it. I'm already a member at FanDuel, so just honestly take advantage of this. Three free weeks is a hell of a deal. Visit FanDuel.com to look up anything you want and download America's #1 sportsbook. Go get your free 3 weeks of Sunday Ticket, guys. All right, you're back on Locked On UConn. So we've been going over all of the different things I've heard about the recruiting process, about Braylon Mullins, how we're basically head-to-head against Indiana with a dark horse of Dusty May in Michigan lurking in the backdrop with a slew of visits that he's left to take. So, again, subject to change. That we are essentially not maybe the leaders in the clubhouse with quite a few of these guys. And we're pretty much at that stage where they're all going on their official visits. They're all starting to, some dominoes are dropping. Jasper Johnson went to Kentucky, and that's the reason why people truly believe that Braylon is now considering UConn over Indiana potentially. Niko Bundaloo revisiting the Darius Adams, Acaden Lewis now getting some heat from Kentucky, and Acaden has in his Final Four UConn, Kentucky, Duke, and Carolina. So not a bad quartet of teams. We all know where the best place to go lies. Clearly, it's us at UConn. But predictions are always tough because these kids and who's running them. And, I still think we land 3 kids. I think we get as follows. Drum roll, please. No, I'm kidding. Acaden Lewis. I think he's the type of kid that is again a Hurley kid because he's not the 5-star but he's got the talent. He's like another version of Ahmad Noel. He's a little bigger, 6'3". They don't have the same body types. So I don't think I'm comparing them apples to apples. But what I'm saying is that he'd come in with a chip on his shoulder. He probably believes he's a 5-star. He probably believes that he's not getting as much pub as he should. So those guys are always big Hurley guys. I think we get Darius Adams because of what I mentioned before. I think he's kind of flown under the radar as a 5-star. He's another big guard, 6'5", can score. Both these guys, Acaden and Darius, can score on all three levels. Darius is a bigger body, but he needs to put a little meat on his bones at only 160 pounds. But those two, I believe, are the backcourt that we get. And I think we get Niko Bundaloo in kind of a surprise. I think he was really enamored with UConn. I think he would fit in perfectly for us in terms of his size and his frame. What is underrated about Nico is his defensive ability. So I think UConn, if they feel like he's a fit from a personality standpoint, he fits for what UConn is trying to do. He's a plug and play kid. He's a 6'11" kid who can shoot it, can play good defense. He's a rim protector. He also can do what they ask of guys, maybe not as intricate yet because he hasn't been in this offense, but he can handle the dribble handoffs. He can handle the decisions and the processing, hopefully quickly. As a freshman, that's going to be tough to kind of pick up, but he's a hard worker. He's relentless. And I think that that's also part of the Dan Hurley makeup. Who I'd want to see, those are my predictions. I would rather it be Malik Thomas, Braylon Mullins, and Eric Reeby. But the three that I mentioned, they're not consolation prizes. All 6 of these players in an alternative universe where you have to bring in 5-6 guys because you have a bunch of seniors or guys who are transferring in and out would be phenomenal to have. Acaden, Darius, and Nico would be welcome additions and immediately help the Huskies in 2025. I think the toughest flip right now is Braylon because not only do you have the hometown pull, probably over 1 million reasons to stay and be a hero in your hometown, but you have the Dusty May possibility because, look, Dusty May is an elite coach. He's a former Indiana alum. If Mike Woodson can't win with the players that he has at Indiana right now, you don't think they're going to be calling Dusty May first call? Maybe Brad Stevens. Maybe try to think of some other names. Maybe Mike Lewis. But Dusty is going to be on the short list. Outside chance of someone like a Wes Miller, my guy over at Cincinnati. But if Indiana opens up in 2025-26 after next season, and Dusty May was able to snag Braylon Mullins, he would immediately transfer to Indiana. So that's why I think that's going to be a tough one. I would love it. He's my number one recruit. I think he's a dog. Everything I've heard about him is that he is an absolute beast of a player. And I hate to use this phrase because I don't like to compare people, but people want comps. In a Cam Spencer mold, like this kid is laser focused. For a young kid, this is all he does. This is all he loves. So I think those two factors weigh heavy, and I don't know if it's an easy turn down, but I think he spurns us eventually, which sucks, but that's life. And then with Reeby, I think it's just a gut feeling. I don't have as much intel on that. I'm not as connected on the Kansas stuff and Creighton. His recruitment has been a bit more quiet, so he could surprise everyone and choose a Creighton, which would suck too because we have to play him in the Big East. But from what I've heard initially is before KU got involved, that Creighton is a major player. So we'll see on that one. And then the same thing with Malik. I think he's with Overtime Elite, and so they're gonna go to whomever pays the most NIL. That's been their MO. This is nothing against Malik Thomas. And even though UConn can match anyone, maybe with the exception of BYU in their NIL package, they don't want to. It has zero to do with, I hear all these guys, you're a poverty program, blah, blah, blah. There is something called devaluing of a program. And when you only spend over what the person is worth to you, that's a devalue of their program to have a bidding war with a competitor. If you want to go to a place where it's all about NIL first, and then they do the basketball, then go right ahead, my man. And this is again not just about Malik Thomas. If it happens with Braylon too, if Indiana offers him $1.5 million to come to Indiana, I'm just using that phrase. I've heard it's gonna be $1 million or more, and UConn's like, hey man, like we love you, we want you here, but this is what we're willing to pay, and it's not that, it's half of that. Choose, and he chooses Indiana, then that's it. That's his prerogative. Good for him. So it goes for everybody, whether it's Braylon Mullins, Acaden Lewis, Eric Reeby. If you choose NIL over as the first priority, you just won't be a fit at UConn. But that's who I think. That's who I think we're gonna get, guys. And I really appreciate you jumping on and listening to this. Thanks for listening. I'll when I hear more about this stuff. This is a lot of what I love to do is UConn basketball recruiting. Yeah, this has been a fun weekend to kind of follow UConn athletics. Keep grinding UConn football. Got a big one coming up against FAU. And this has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked in, stay connected. Make sure that toughness meter is always rising. And as always, go Huskies.